Hey guys, it's Gioya, and I recently turned 30, and so I've just been thinking a lot about the past decade and, the things that I've learned and what would I tell myself if I met myself when I was 20. So the first thing that I learned is that skincare, hair care, and nutrition, all those things are like largely really personal, and, I learned this in multiple different phases in my 20s, but the first one was with my roommate who used coconut oil on her first cleanse, and so I didn't know about double cleansing, and so I started using coconut oil with her. But it moisturized her skin, but it made me get styes, and I was like, how is this possible? Maybe because you have two different skin types. And the same thing happened when I switched from like salon shampoos to Head and Shoulders. My doctor actually told me to use it because I had complained about having like little white things in my hair and I didn't know what it was. And she was like, yeah, that's dandruff. And I was like, oh, okay. And Head and Shoulders like completely solved it, despite the entire internet saying that this is like a bad shampoo. The same goes with nutrition. I think that a lot of people on the internet will claim that like one specific diet is the best diet, when in reality, like, these are discussions that you should probably be having with your doctor, and like at the end of the day, everybody's body is different. The next thing I would say is do not try and keep up with the Joneses. I have seen multiple videos where someone will ask someone else like, how did you afford that trip? And they're like, I booked it on my credit card and I thought about it later. And I think that that's like really terrible advice, and I don't think that you should follow that. I know you've heard it before, but it's so easy to get into credit card debt, and those interest payments can really add up, and it can be really hard to get out of it later on. That's not to say that like you shouldn't use your money to do fun things. Like, I've definitely done a lot of fun things in my 20s, but I always did it because I could afford it. And I think that you'll enjoy it more that way, because if you're stressed about, doing something just because your friends are doing it and because they have the money to do it, and you're doing it just to be able to experience it with them, unless you really have a plan to pay that quickly, credit card interest rates, especially in the US, are extremely high, and it's very hard to get out of that kind of debt. So yeah, try and think about your future self and like making their life a little bit easier. The general advice is that you should pay off your credit cards on a regular basis. You should put everything on auto pay, that you should have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, and that you should be, if you're in the US, investing for retirement. And once you have those kind of like base items, you can kind of play around with how you optimize your money. There are some people who like put all of their money into a high yield savings account, and they take money out to pay for their like bills and things like that, because then you're like gaining interest on like all your money. I am not that anal about my money, but all that to say that like there's a baseline of security and safety that you should have. The next thing that I learned is that it's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to rethink your identity. I think that when you're in your early 20s, it's really easy to be like, I was so dumb when I was a teenager, and now I am so much smarter, and I know what's right and I know what's wrong. But I think that in your 20s, at least for me, I grew and changed so much. I think you just need to give yourself time and space to expand what you think about yourself and what you think about the world around you. Your 20s can really challenge you in a lot of different ways, and it's okay to, when you're presented with new information, to change your opinion. I think also we're in a culture of consumption and regurgitation, and not so much of the art of the digestion. And digestion takes time. It takes time to take in new ideas and concepts, and to fully like understand them, and to see what you think about them, and to adjust your opinions accordingly. The next thing I would tell myself is that friendship is crucial, and that it is intentional. So, I spend a lot of time alone, and growing up as an only child, I'm pretty comfortable alone, but making those small efforts, I think, has a huge impact in terms of like quality of life, but also like in maintaining friendships. There are some people who think that like in order to have friends, to be friends with someone, you have to spend a lot of energy, and you have to be like a best friend to that person, otherwise like that friendship isn't worth it. I am not a person that's in that camp. I believe that no matter the depth of my friendship with someone, it's always worth my time. And I found that like even with my deepest friendships, it's the smallest things that make the biggest impact. And so, as someone who's moved abroad, it's hard to keep in contact with my friends. I don't get to see them on a daily basis or do kind of like my daily life with them, but sending texts to each other, FaceTiming each other, and even just sending memes to each other is a legitimate way to maintain our friendship across, huge swaths of distance. And I think if you are in the same city as your friends, really great advice I've heard is that you should treat these friendships like relationships, that you should make time for them to have a date, and you try and support each other emotionally and try to get to learn about each other and, be there for each other. I think the sad thing about my generation is that we have kind of become very individualistic in the sense that like everything is about self-care and like protecting our peace and all that. And those are important things, but I also think that like we owe our society a lot of things, and friendship is, one of those things that your friends deserve from you. And I think that it doesn't take that much effort. I don't know if people get intimidated by like friendship and that it's this big, concept, and that if I don't do it correctly, like it's not good enough or whatever. But my biggest advice is just like do those small little things and it will really help to maintain a friendship. Like, I don't know, a small little meme can go a long way. My last piece of advice is that all advice and its value is relative. When I moved abroad, there was a lot of feedback that I got. I got the feedback that, France is not a good place to make money, that, moving for a man can be dangerous, and that I should have a backup plan in place, among other remarks. And this advice is coming from a good place, right? Like they want to protect me, they want to make sure that I'm looking out for myself. If I had listened to that, then I wouldn't be living here, and I've been here for over 3 years now. So I think that like I cannot take into account someone else's fear in my decisions. I mean, I can, but I don't have to. I'm not obligated to.
Hey guys, Editing Gioya here, and I just wanted to add a little bit more context. I think that, I'm not trying to make it sound like these people were bad for suggesting that I need to think about what if my relationship ends, because that's legitimate, right? But it was something that I had thought about, and I think that they were missing kind of the goalpost that I had in mind, which was to move abroad, right? And so that's the other point about advice, right? Like if you want to run a marathon, like would you ask for advice from someone who'd never run a day in their life? Like probably not, you know what I mean? They might say like, oh, but you could hurt your knees and you might fall, right? But that's probably part of the process, and at the end of the day, that's not your end goal might not be to preserve your knees. Every once in a while we get our head in the cloud and we need somebody who will bring us back down to earth and be like, be realistic, be smart, you're not thinking about everything. But that's where it's up to you. Like, is this advice relevant to my situation? So that's what I was trying to say. I feel like I didn't quite get there, but anyways.
Did I just like negate my whole video? Yeah, maybe. But the whole point is that like in my 20s, I lived my life, and nobody else could do that for me. And it's the same for you. I can sit here and give you advice, or you can listen to the advice of a ton of other people, but at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to make the decisions that are in front of you, and it's going to lead to your experience in your 20s. And I hope that you enjoy your 20s if you are in your 20s. For me, obviously, I'm going into my 30s now, and all I can say is I'm really excited for it. I feel like the lessons that I've learned in my 20s have really set me up for a solid foundation. I feel like I know myself better, and those are all things, if you're in your 20s, to look forward to. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't ramble too much, and I will see you, hopefully, when the weather is better outside. Having said that, I do think that there is something really weird going on with hygiene on the internet, and like this idea of cleanliness I find is like competitive on the internet, and it's a little bit weird. It's okay to have like deep thoughts about things. That sounds so stupid. Anyways,
Alex Honnold said, you're asking me to make a calculation about the value of my life and to try and extend the length of my life. And he's like, I know that I'm gonna die mountain climbing.
You can feel a lot of despair about like aging and getting older, but now that I'm here, it's like what's the big deal? You know what I mean? So